Ahmad, Country Managing Director, SAP, Pakistan. Asif Kareem, Managing Director and CEO, Systems Limited and TechVista Systems, UAE. I think Asif's not here. Syed Veqar-Ul-Islam, CEO and Director, Jaffer Brothers Systems. And Ali Naseer, Chief Corporate and Regulatory Affairs Officer, Jazz. We have a great collection of people here today with us. We have people here today who are into the product side of IT. We have people here who are the system side of IT. We have people here who, in the case of Ali Naseer, look after an incubator called the Jazz Accelerator. In the coming 1.5 hours, we talk about what the product side is, what the system side is, what service side is, what role does the government play, or what role incubators play, and what sort of technology are we seeing ahead. Essentially, Dr. Ayesha is here. Can I ask Dr. Ayesha to join us on stage? Dr. Ayesha Khan, Pakistan Country Director, Acumen, and board member, Bank Al-Falah. Welcome, Dr. Ayesha. We have people such as Syed Veqar-Ul-Islam, whose company has recently launched Hisab Kitab, personal finance app, which is already number 1 free personal finance app in South Asia, and is being downloaded in some 168 countries. He's going to talk about that. We've got people with a global business executive consulting, such as Asif Kareem. So combined, when you look at this scenario, we've got a great set of panelists who can take us through the entire gamut of what digital transformation is about. I myself represent a bank, and trust me when I say that we in the banking industry are very much aware as to what we see ahead in the shape of fintech, which is a combination of financial services and technology companies. So fintech for us is a very real phenomenon that we across Pakistan and across the world are negotiating. The topic today is digital transformation. One can talk about both the digital aspect of this, combined, these two are separate topics. There's the digital aspect, which talks about the hardware and the software, but there's separate to that, there's a transformation aspect, which talks about how the ecosystem is built around it, what the mindset is in terms of the people who are appreciating these services, these products, who are adopting and adapting to these products and services. Before I hand over to, before I call onto the stage Mr. Ali Hassan Naqvi, President of Marketing Association of Pakistan, I'd also like to welcome our last panelist who just joined us, Mr. Asif Kareem, Managing Director and CEO of Systems Limited and UAE. With this, I'd like to call onto stage Mr. Ali Hassan Naqvi to give his opening remarks, and with that, we'll followed by the session itself and tea talks. Thank you. Mr. Ali Hassan Naqvi.
Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. मेरा नाम अली हसन है. I work for Dawn newspaper, and I also serve Marketing Association. At the start of this year, we thought that the map talks that we hold every month, we hold about 10 such events every year. We decided that we should be focusing more on the digital side this year, because this is where the future is. This is where the entire, as far as my background is concerned, for media, there's a lot of talk about digitalization. So I'm sure that the experience of banking, Ali just mentioned, we have digitalization taking over everything. So with that in mind, we thought that we would have talks on digital topics. Last month we decided that instead of having monologues, let's have a conversation amongst the business leaders. Because the one advantage that we thought of having a conversation is that we can easily jump from one topic to another, as opposed to delivering a monologue which has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. That's more informal, and that's going to enrich the audience much more than a monologue would. So with that in mind, we were lucky to have the type of speakers that we could gather today, the galaxy of speakers that we have today. And I'm sure Veqar-Ul-Islam sahab, जिस तरह से conducts meetings, वो इस बार conduct करेंगे. We will have the pertinent questions, because एक बड़ा मसला ये होता है कि when you have a group of such intelligent people, you need an equally intelligent moderator who can actually evoke some good responses from them. So basically, I had brought a 3-page introduction, लेकिन मेरा ख्याल में अली ने मेरे लिए कुछ कहने को छोड़ा नहीं है. Just to give you a brief about who we are, Marketing Association of Pakistan, some of those who may not know about it, was launched in 1967. It was registered in 1969. So technically, we are either 50 years old, 51 years old, or we will be 50 years old next year. So we have an illustrious past. We have people, mashallah, बहुत बड़े-बड़े नाम कमाए जो हमारे मार्केटिंग एसोसिएशन के मेंबर थे, और अभी भी हमारे पास जो लोग हैं बैठे हुए थे, जिसमें सैयद अजीज साहब, they are names जो कि बड़े मशहूर नाम हैं अपने फील्ड के. तो हमारा एफर्ट हमेशा से ये रहा है कि हम forgot to switch off now. तो हमारी कोशिश हमेशा से ये रही है कि ये जो हम 3 मीटिंग्स करवाते हैं, जिसको हमने मैप टॉक्स का नाम दिया, इससे हम सब लोग कुछ ना कुछ हासिल करते होते हैं. और with that, I think I'll hand over the stage back to Ali. Ali, thank you very much.
I think the crux of this afternoon is the map talk, and I would not like to stand in between you and the talk itself, so I would now hand over the session to the moderator, Syed Veqar-Ul-Islam sahab. We'll have a session, a moderation session going on for the next 1 hour. Uske baad aapko mauka milega तकरीबन 6:15 तक है to ask questions and answers that I'm sure you probably have. So with that, Veqar sahab, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Ali. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Since our Prime Minister has stopped reading prepared speeches, so I thought I'll make an attempt with the notes and see how it goes. Digital transformation, it's a fact, but it's also a reality. So the way I'm going to conduct this session is I'll do an intro, about 10 minutes, so please bear with me, on covering some of the aspects that I see extremely important when we talk about digital transformation, and also what's driving this. And that's extremely important to understand. Once that is done, then I'll go to each of the esteemed panelists, and I'll ask them to give an intro of 5 to 7 minutes each. Once that is done, I would like to limit my questions as much as I can to these panelists, and I would open the floor to the audience. So you ask as many questions as you like to the panelists, and they get more time to interact with you, because that's what their sense is, as Ali also spoke about. If you don't have questions, then of course I'll ask questions, or I'll volunteer someone to ask questions. Just about from my viewpoint, I thought, let me share 2 examples, real-life examples from my life on digital transformation and how it is affecting the culture of where we do things. And it is extremely important that we also differentiate in this country about systems, policies, processes, laws versus the culture that is prevalent. Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you're not able to build a culture which promotes what you want to promote, you can come up with any laws, processes, policies, systems, won't work. So at the end of the day, it is about digital culture that we are trying to build or we want to build in this country. Till that happens, the dream of digital transformation is not going to realize. And that's just about to set the stage on what digital transformation is all about, because they think कोई आसमानी बला एकदम से उतरेगी सब चीज digital हो जाएगी, ऐसा नहीं होगा. We need to really work towards building a digital culture. दो बहुत interesting मेरी जिंदगी के वाक़यात relating to this culture that I thought I'll start off. I have a very, very dear friend who is a top architect in Islamabad. This was from my time in Islamabad. And I was sitting in his office one day. He called someone to his office and he wanted something to get picked up. So he said, Muslim, which is tayyar hai, please jaake wahan se lekhe aa. So Muslim possibly is someone who studied middle school at best. He went out. After 10 minutes, he sent an SMS. This is about 10, 12 years ago, so WhatsApp was not prevalent. And my friend was getting quite jittery reading that SMS. क्या भेज दिया उसने, एक काम मैंने कहा था वो कर नहीं रहा, क्या लिखा हुआ है मुझे समझ नहीं आ रही, छोटा सा काम कहा था, why can't he call me, why is he sending SMS if he can't write English and da. So I said, show it to me, क्या लिखा है. So I read the SMS and I said, the SMS is very clear, what's your issue? I said, मुझे तो समझ नहीं आ रहा. तो उसमें SMS में उसने लिखा था अपनी अंग्रेजी में और अपनी स्पेलिंग यूज करके, not ready sir, और रेडी की स्पेलिंग REDY लिखी हुई, नॉट रेडी सर, जिसका मतलब जो चीज़ आपने मुझसे कही थी वो तैयार नहीं है, ठीक. गिविंग टैबलेट, ये आदमी मुझे गोली दे. So he was able to communicate what he wanted to communicate, right? The point I'm trying to make with this example, when you create an enabling culture, anywhere, in any organization, in any country, in any home, you create an enabling culture, people upgrade themselves. This guy wouldn't even in his dream would have thought about writing an SMS in English to his boss. His teacher would have never dreamt. But he was able to communicate what he wanted to communicate, the way he wanted to communicate, and people understood. That's what culture does. And that's what enabling environment does. That's one example. And this is an example of how digitalization has helped us change our behavior and has helped us upgrade our behavior. Here's another one which is also interesting. Right? About 3 years ago or 3.5 years ago, during the tenure of previous government, I had an opportunity to go and meet one of the ministers, right? Federal minister in Islamabad. Islamabad, interesting जगह है, जो उस शहर को जानते हैं. मैं 17 साल वहाँ रहा हूँ, तो पाकिस्तान के अलावा सब कुछ है. So I was sitting with him and there was his business cards right beside where I was sitting. So I picked up one business card, I had a look at it, he had a Yahoo email address. And that shocked me. How can a minister use a Yahoo email address? I thought, boss, आप कैसे कर सकते हैं? How can you use this? He said, what's the problem? This is not the way to do official communication. Yahoo is supposed to be a personal email. He didn't understand, but then he gave me a 5-minute lecture. कि यार बता रहा आप क्या बात कर रहे हैं इस मुल्क में, मैं आपको किस्सा बताता हूँ, आप टेक्नोलॉजी की बातें कर रहे हैं, डिजिटल. And this minister was by the way of a ministry which is supposed to be technology savvy. Right? I won't talk about the ministry or the name, but you can make some guesses. So he said about when I came as a minister, I wrote a mail to one of the chairmen of my organization. And this organization that he was referring to is definitely supposed to be the best technology company in this country or amongst the best technology company in this country. He said I wrote a mail to my chairman and he didn't respond. 48 hours I waited, I was quite unhappy कि यार एक आदमी मिनिस्टर को जवाब नहीं दे रहा, तो बाकियों को क्या जवाब देगा? I sent a polite reminder. No response. I said after about 3 days, and I decided not to call this guy, and I was so upset that I wanted to fire this guy. Chairman called him for some other task. Said before he could start with what he wanted to speak to me about, I gave it to him. He said, "Chalo sahab, aap nahi mailon ka jawab tak to dena pasand nahi karte. So why should I talk to you?" So, "No sir, I didn't get any of your mail." ये कैसे हो सकता है? मैंने आपको मेल भेजी है, क्या आपको मेल नहीं मिली? ये कैसे हो सकता है? I didn't get it. He said, "That's not true. I've checked my outbox. It's not there." So देखा सर प्लीज मुझे 10 मिनट दें. Let me check from my office and I'll come back to you. So 10 minutes later, the chairman calls, worried that his boss is angry, right? And he said, "कि sir, वो आपने मेल नहीं, ईमेल भेजी थी. तो मेल तो मुझे नहीं मिली और ये ईमेल किसी ने मुझे पुट अप नहीं की." Culture, right? And we're talking about, and I don't need to go into details on where your public sector is. So that's what culture is. And digital transformation is all about changing the culture. So what's driving this change, or some of the factors that are driving this change? I'm sure the panelists are going to talk in more detail. And not just what is driving the change, but what are some of the consequences of digital transformation that are going to take place. So one of the key drivers that I see is business models are changing in a massive way, like possibly never before. In terms of the whole world. I don't know how many of you know it or not. About 5 years ago, Fortune 500 में जितनी companies थी, and they're all, as you know, multi-billion-dollar companies. Out of the 500 companies, 250 companies do not exist. They're gone. That's all about because business खराब होता है मेरे नज़दीक जब business model फर्क हो जाता है. Transport as a business model is still a perfect business model. Taxi as a business model is a bad business case. Uber, Kareem, Syed, and so many others, they have changed the business model of transport. Taxi walas did not see it coming. They are in trouble. Real estate, उसका business model फर्क कर दिया Airbnb ने. क्योंकि उसने business model फर्क कर दिया, जो real estate की बड़ी-बड़ी companies थी, they were in trouble. So it's extremely important. आज के दौर में, if you look at Pakistan, for example, I personally and very strongly believe that the business model of these small shopkeepers, जो गोश्त वाला है, जो सब्जी वाला है, जो छोटी grocery store है, उसका business model is in serious jeopardy. Why? Because the big players have entered that market. अब Meat One गोश्त बेचता है, अब इम्तियाज बेचता है, Hyperstar बेचता है, उसके पास कोई क्यों जाएगा? Unless you find a way to connect him with the consumer. And that can only happen through digitalization, where we start using mobile phone. We spoke about Saquib that we have launched as an app. That's all what this app is going to do as we move ahead. It's about personal finances of people, but it's also about linking businesses to consumers. तो जब तक आप उस सब्जी वाले को, गोश्त वाले को using digital technology link नहीं करेंगे कंज्यूमर के साथ, और उसके पास से वो means खत्म हो जाएंगे, which is a means of doing business through physical interaction, then his business is in trouble. So digital transformation is changing the business models in a massive way. And also the need to be future ready always for organization, always. So I don't care what you do today. As long as you think 5 years down the road, what you are doing today, would it be relevant? If the answer is yes, you are in a decent field. If the answer is I don't know, you are in trouble already. If the answer is no, you need to change and do something today. And right now the span is not more than 5 to 7 years. पहले ज़माने में एक average business का जो size होता था वो 75 साल होता था. So 75 years of business, the life of a business was 75 years. Now it has shrunk to 15 years. And that's what digitalization has done. Right? So important to understand about business modeling. Important to understand about being future ready. HR other. The digitalization has changed the whole HR landscape. It's no more about experience. It's a lot about skills. It's a lot about talent. It's a lot about how current you are with what's happening in the world. And extremely important for people to understand. Right? When I was growing up in my professional career, anyone in his 50s was considered a real asset for organization. Real asset. People used to peak beyond 55.